Hello everyone, my name is Usman Mehboob and I am Director at the Institute of Health Professions Education and Research at the Khyber Medical University, Peshawar in Pakistan. It's really lovely to meet you all today and to have this presentation and to discuss it with you. So I'll be talking about how we plan and how we can conduct a research project. Okay, so let's start with a puzzle. Any idea what is this? And how it is related to the bird and the horse with a cart, a bunch of flowers and a train and a house looking building and a lantern. So all those were just small pieces of a puzzle, but when you put them coherently in an organized manner, they form a well constructed research project or a scenery. So before starting any research project, a researcher has to write a synopsis or a proposal to get it approved from the college or the hospital or the university ethics and research board. A synopsis is a brief outline about 4 A4 size pages or 1000 words of what you are going to do in your future research project. The main headings in any research project are the title, introduction, objectives, operational definitions if there are any, a hypothesis depending on the type of the study, materials and methods or methodology, the results section, and then discussion and conclusion at the end. This is the introduction. The introduction should contain background of the selected topic, and it preferably should have literature from the last 5 years. Moreover, we should also identify the gaps in the literature. One of the important subheadings in the introduction section is the rationale or the significance or the purpose of the study. The rationale must identify the importance of the study, its relevance, and applicability of the results. It also must clearly state the purpose of the study. Another important subheading in the introduction section after the rationale is the objectives. The objectives are statement of mentions. They inform the reader clearly what the researcher plans to do in his or her work. The objectives must identify the variables involved in research, and we'll discuss the variables in a while. The objectives should start with an action verb such as determine, analyze, compare, and evaluate. One of the ways to think about writing objectives is to think smartly. S stands for sufficiently specific, M is for measurable, A is for achievable, R is for relevant, and T is for time bound. One of another subheading that you may find in the introduction section is the operational definition. Operational definition is specifically a term that will tell you how a specific variable will be measured in a study. For example, morbidity. Now, morbidity encompasses number of aspects such as prolonged hospital stay, severe pain, immediate complications, and long-term sequelae. So, a research must define how a vague term will be measured in this specific context of your study. Here you can see the operational definition of efficacy. Now, in some studies, the efficacy may mean time taken in relief of symptoms which may be pain, fever, cough, heartburn, etc. Efficacy may take into account number of side effects or time taken for complete recovery. So one of the requirements to specify is that how efficacy will be measured in your study. And this is how an operational definition is different from the dictionary definition. Let's discuss two of the terms that will keep bothering you throughout as a researcher. One is the variables, and another one is hypothesis. A variable is a concept or a noun that stands for variation within a class of objects. So, as you can see, the word in itself explains itself. Anything that varies in a research is a variable. There are different ways of classifying variables. One of the ways is to classify them as quantitative and categorical variables. The example of quantitative variable can be height, age, sales, units, income, salary, GPA, IQ, temperature, etc. And then the example of categorical variables can be gender, as you can either have male, female, or transgender. There are few genders. Looking at this picture, what is the variable type here? What is the variable type here? This one should be easy for you. What are the possible variables in here? So these were just few examples. Now think about the different categorical and quantitative variables that you have identified in these few examples. Now let's move on to hypothesis. A hypothesis is a statement showing expected relation between two variables. It is required in the following study designs: all interventional studies, cohort study designs, case control studies, and comparative cross-sectional studies. A hypothesis is a possible answer to the research question. Now, there can be directional hypotheses such as more or less, or non-directional hypotheses, for example, not identified. We'll further discuss hypotheses later on in some other research workshop. Now from here, the next part of your research project starts. That is the study design or the methodology part of your research project. Now a study design, we should be mentioning the name of the appropriate study design that we would follow in our study. Here in this flowchart, you can see different types of study designs. Here you can appreciate the different types of study designs according to the timeline. This flowchart will help you how to decide your research approach. One of the important sections of the methodology chapter or section is the sample size. For example, how many patients or participants or students will be included, and if there are groups, how many per group. And sometimes you may need a statistician for this work. Two of the important things that we need to consider while collecting the sample is the inclusion criteria and the exclusion criteria. So the inclusion criteria is on what basis will patients or students or participants be inducted in the study. And the exclusion criteria is on what basis will patients or participants or students be excluded from the study. Another important subheading in the methodology section is data collection procedure. So a detailed account of how a researcher will perform his research should be mentioned. How he or she will measure the variables, and it includes identification of the study variables, methods for collection of data, and what type of data collection tools will be used, such as performers or questionnaires. One another important subheading of the methodology section is data analysis procedure. So you have to mention the name of the software that you will be using, the descriptive statistics, and which type of significance of test you would be applying. and then the variables and how you will be applying it. Can any one of you name any data collection instrument that you are using or are planning to use in your research projects? So, if you are using a performer or a questionnaire as a data collection instrument, you must attach it as an annexure with your research project. And this performer or questionnaire must match the objectives and must not contain irrelevant sections such as like inclusion and exclusion criteria. One of the important sections in any research project is the references. Usually, in biomedical sciences, we use the Vancouver style. However, different journals have different referencing styles. So, you must know the referencing style of a journal in which you want to publish the paper. Moreover, because there is a lot of research going on, so preferably you should have some of the references from the last 5 years. And you should also make sure that all these references, their links, their DOI numbers, they are correctly mentioned so they can be verified. Okay, so let's summarize. A research project should contain a title, an introduction, objectives. It can also have operational definitions, and there might be few study designs that may have hypotheses. Then there is a section on methodology, a section on results, and then at the end we discuss with other studies to make comparisons and conclude it. So, with this, I would like to thank you all for your patient listening. And if there are any questions, I would be available online, or Dr. Rishi would be able to answer them over there. Thank you, everyone, and nice to meet you all.